So as the data show, about 1 in 7, which is about 15%, has some depression symptoms.
That 1 in 7 is kind of high though.
Yeah. And wait till you hear about anxiety. It's more than 1 in 4. About 27% of youth in that study reported anxiety symptoms.
Which is crazy because if you think about in a classroom of like 40, there's at least 5 kids that are depressed or anxious.
Yeah.
But for today, I'm loving me.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Lovin Me Conversations, hosted by me, Daphne Khoo, and brought to you by Lovin Me, a youth mental wellness initiative by McDonald's Singapore. The key part of this initiative is to have a safe space for open conversation about mental wellness and mental health, and that's what we'll be exploring today. And we have Brian here to talk about it. I'm so glad to have you on the show.
Hi, Daphne.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Do you want to give everyone maybe just a little background as to what it is that you do and why you are so important in this conversation today?
Okay, my name is Brian and I'm a clinical psychologist. I work in the Institute of Mental Health in the Department of Developmental Psychiatry.
Okay.
So I'm actually a child psychologist. So my patients are mainly aged 6 to 19.
So what drew you to work with younger people rather than like middle-aged or like adults?
I think I started work in REACH, which is a community team that work with young people.
Okay.
And I developed a love for working with, the teenagers. So from then on, I just work. And I came back to IMH to work in the clinic as well. Yeah.
Do you find that, I feel like youth mental wellness and the awareness of like mental health is a lot more prominent now than it's ever been? Does that mean that you see more people more open, or do you feel like it's kind of the same and social media is just like making it look like we talk about it more?
I think over the years, there's definitely increase in people talking about it. There's more openness, and of course with social media, there's more conversations about mental health, youth mental health.
And do you think that's been helpful or less helpful in terms of like what you do as your job? Because I think there has been this surge in, I have ADHD, or I have this, or I have that, and this idea that they might, like, they're riddled with worry that that's what they have and that's why they can't get through their lives when life is just generally hard, right? Do you think that has put kind of like mental wellness on a higher pedestal than it should be, or do you think it's right that we're giving that a bigger platform right now?
I think it's good that we are giving it a bigger platform, and mental health disorders or mental illness in general have strong stigma against them. So most people are not willing to talk about it. Only in recent years when we see people start to open up about these topics. And I think it's the move in the right direction.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I guess working with youths, do you have to kind of deal with the parents as well? Has that changed over the years? I mean, you said you've been doing this for like 15 years.
Yeah,
14,
nearly 15 years.
Yeah, has that changed the way that parents view, mental wellness or encouraging their kids to go for counseling and stuff?
So I think one thing about working with young people is that you don't work with them in silos. You work with the parents, you work with the teachers, you work with the counselors. So I've interviewed helpers, grandparents, uncles, aunties before.
You interview them for the kid that you're
for the kid, some of them might not be taken care of by the parents.
Right.
So I interview the main stakeholders, people who take care of my patients. And your second question is whether they are
more open to talk about it, or encouraging them to like go and get help.
I think it depends. I can't say for general, but there's more awareness for sure. So people are more aware that mental illness or mental health disorders is a real thing.
But when you say they're more aware, do you mean like they are more open to talk about it, or they're actually more involved? Because I think back in the day, I mean, like when we were kids, if I went to my parents and said, I don't think my mind is quite right, my parents would be like, you crazy, you siao ah. Like, they won't, the last thing that they would do is like, maybe let's go get help. Like, let's see a professional. I think that was just like not even a thing, when we were kids. And so that's like, that's kind of, instead of even talking about it, they don't talk about it. But now do you see that parents are more open to talk about it? And that's like part one. And then part two is, do they get more involved? Like, do they really want to learn how to talk to their kids more?
I think there's a certain selection bias because by the time they come to IMH,
Yep, that's true.
they are
That's
really
fair,
seeking
yeah.
help, right? And I think the condition could have been quite severe, and to the point that they can no longer push it to stress.
Yeah.
And parents by then will be more aware and more willing, to let their child seek help and talk about it.
I don't know if I'm able to ask this or whether you're
Yeah.
able to answer this, but are there youths that come to you that don't have their parents' support?
Yes, there is.
And there is a safe space to be able to go there and do
Yes.
that without, because they are youths, right? Like, do
Yes.
they need their parents to sign a consent form or anything, or is that something that they can just independently do, saying that they believe that they need help?
So unfortunately, right, because they are still minors,
Yeah.
we still need their parents. So there are people who walk into the emergency room, but ultimately we will still try to convince them that parental agreement is needed. So we still need to contact their parents. But there are some who are okay to come for therapy without parents,
Yeah.
maybe in the subsequent sessions.
Okay.
So usually in the first session, we will want the parents to come to
Okay.
explain things. Yeah.
Interesting. So when people talk about mental health, they talk about depression and anxiety. Now,
Yeah.
these two terms you use quite regularly,
Yeah.
but they're so broad.
Yes.
Is there any way to break that down, or is there more specific terms that we can use that maybe fall under the umbrella of depression and anxiety, or even outside of those terms?
So when we talk about mental health issues, depression and anxiety are often being brought up, and one of the main reasons is because of the prevalence, right? In the recent National Youth Mental Health Study done in 2022 and published recently, we can see that actually a lot of our youth aged between 15 to 35 suffers from depression or anxiety. So as the data show, about 1 in 7, which is about 15%, has some depression symptoms.
That's 1 in 7 is kind of high, though.
Yeah. And wait till you hear about anxiety. It's more than 1 in 4. About 27% of youth in that study reported anxiety symptoms.
And which is crazy because, I mean, I know that you're more of an expert with youths, but if you think about the older generation that's completely blind to these, could be blind to these terms or avoidant at best, what that number could be even higher. But if you think about in a classroom of like 40, there's at least 5 kids that are depressed or anxious, and they might not even understand those terms, right? Is there a way to bring that into a discussion safely with someone that, or present to be a safe space for the youth in Singapore?
I think it's great that people are talking about it, and even though not everyone might use the term accurately, but it's really a starting point, right? When someone talk about depression, it could mean a lot of things. It could mean that they are having low mood, they're not feeling well. Or it could mean that they are really having a clinical or major depression.
So even just not feeling good or not feeling well, like you could also diagnose that as depression?
No. So that's how people self-diagnose.
I see. Okay. Yes.
People tend to say, I have depression.
I'm sick.
I have depression when they are really having some bad
Just
days.
a bad day. Yeah. But that's not.
No, that's not.
Okay.
So to diagnose depression, you need a criteria, right, and a timeline, and most importantly, you need to have this thing called functioning. How the functioning is being affected. Yeah.
Functioning would be like kind of your day-to-day.
You can't go to school. You can't
So
work.
it's like debilitating.
Yes.
Depression.
Yes. So for it to be labeled as a disorder or diagnosed as a disorder, it needs to meet certain criteria. So not just low mood. There's also a time element, for 2 weeks, and then there's a series of criteria that you need to meet.
Are there any signs that lead towards it before it gets to that point?
Signs of, you mean depression?
Like, signs of, before it becomes debilitating. Like, is there, how they always say like prevention is better than cure. Is there any way to like, any telltale signs that someone, a youth or even someone as an adult, like signs that can show that they may be going in that direction, and if there's anything they can do about it? I've noticed that, especially in Singapore, because everyone lives with their family, there's this put on, like there's this kind of I'm gonna be okay in front of my family. But I guess why I want to ask that is if anyone's listening or watching and they're experiencing certain symptoms, to know that maybe they should seek help or do something to brighten themselves before they get to that place. Because to be in a position where you're debilitatingly sad and you can't do life, that must feel awful. Like I can't imagine what that's like. So if there's any way to like know when you're on your way there, like are there any other symptoms that before it becomes like a criteria for being depressed?
So if we focus on depression, it's actually quite a complex mental health disorder or even a medical condition. So a lot of people would like to link it to low mood.
Yes.
But that's just one of the criteria. And if you look at the entire criteria, right, there's different presentation of depression, right? It could be mood swing, low mood, and then we can look at the thoughts, the cognitive aspect of depression. You might start to have negative thoughts about life. You might be hopeless. You don't see any hope or any point of life. Suicidal thoughts. That's another aspect. And behaviorally, you might start to not want to do things, right? Not want to get out of bed, don't want to go to school, don't feel like doing anything.
I'm sure also everyone has experienced those feelings at some point in their lives. And is that very different from anxiety?
Okay, there are two separate medical conditions that sometimes overlap.
Of course they're different. Sorry, can you explain how
sometimes they
anxiety is
overlap.
Okay.
And they have different criteria.
Of course.
If you want to know the criteria for depression, there's actually an acronym. So you can imagine it's quite a visual acronym, right? In set cages. So IN stands for interest. So you loss of interest. So you start to not like to do things that you want to do.
Like no desire to do it.
No desire. They call it anhedonia. So you don't enjoy what you used to enjoy.
Right, okay.
Don't feel like going out anymore. Don't feel like engaging in your hobbies. So loss of interest. S is sleep changes. You either sleep a lot, hypersomnia, or insomnia. Then A is appetite. So you lose appetite, don't feel like eating, you lose a lot of weight. So if you observe someone losing a lot of weight or gaining a lot of weight, binge eating, that could be one of the symptoms of depression.
Okay.
D is depressed mode, as we know, right? C stands for concentration. So
cannot concentrate.
Cannot focus. You try to work, but it's really hard to work. Cannot focus well. A is activity level. So you see the person becoming a bit low. Not doing anything.
Lethargic.
Very lethargic. Or the other way, the other spectrum is very easily agitated. And very frustrated, irritable. G stands for guilt. So very high level of guilt. You have a lot of thoughts that it's my fault. So and E stands for energy level. So very low energy in general. And S is the one that people are quite aware or even afraid of talking about, which is suicidal thoughts. So when people have depression, sometimes they find that life is so hopeless and meaningless. They start to develop some kind of suicidal ideation.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like people are very scared about talking about suicidal thoughts when it's actually quite a common thought to have, especially when you're in despair. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're like, is that a clear indication that you're depressed, or is it just you can be just very low?
Suicidal thoughts is one of the symptoms, but it doesn't mean that when you have suicidal thoughts, you definitely have depression.
I just wanted to point that out because I worry that when people hear that, they immediately think, oh, if I've had suicidal thoughts, then I'm depressed. But sometimes it can just be, doesn't always like equal that. So, I mean, if you're watching, like not everything means that you're depressed, but it's always good to have a conversation with someone about it.
I think it has been a taboo to talk about suicidal thoughts, and especially for sometimes parents are very afraid to hear.
Of course.
But by being afraid and not facing it doesn't mean that it's not there. People do have such thoughts of varying degrees. Sometimes when things get hard, people have fleeting thoughts of suicide. But the thoughts that we are more concerned are thoughts that is very persistent, right? And there's some development of plans, concrete plans. You start thinking about how to do it. You start researching on the internet. You start finding a date. You start writing letters. those are
Yeah,
very
that's-
serious
yeah.
and needs to be attended to immediately.
Okay, let's flip over to anxiety then.
Yes.
Is that what are some concrete signs that is on the horizon?
So when we talk about anxiety, right, it could be refer to the feelings of anxiousness.
Yes.
Right.
And what would that, if you're not someone that's aware of anxiety and stuff like that, what would that present as?
I think most people actually know that they are anxious.
It's
right?
like it's
a
a fast fear almost.
yeah
Of yourself,
it's
or-
a unstable
Uneasy feeling.
uneasy feeling. You know that you're not feeling that well, and people know that they're
Inside.
anxious, but whether it's a anxiety disorder is of course a bit different on the spectrum. Yeah, so for example, coming here I feel anxious. Right,
Hopefully not still.
now it's much better.
Okay,
right?
good.
Now it's much better, but it's normal.
Yeah.
Right, when you do something for the first time, go on a stage, sing in front of people, present, a presentation, or go on an
Meeting
interview.
new people.
Meeting new people, doing an exam. When there's some stakes in that activity, and you have some worry about it not going well, there's bound to be some anxiety. It's normal.
Okay, so we're going to play a little game.
Yep.
I know we're talking about something quite serious, but it's more to make sure that we know what is a myth, because a lot of people are now talking about mental wellness and mental health, and we want to know what's true and what's maybe a myth.
Okay.
So this statement says, anxiety is just about feeling nervous. Everyone experiences it, so it's not a big deal.
It's a myth.
It's a myth?
It's a myth. It's a
Okay,
myth.
so what's the truth?
I think anxiety is saying that it's just nervousness is really oversimplifying a real complex medical condition.
Yeah.
Right? When we talk about anxiety as in anxiety disorders, it's really not just one disorder. It's actually a group of disorders.
Yeah.
So anxiety disorders can be generalized anxiety disorder. It could be specific phobia, social anxiety disorders.
There's multiple anxiety disorders.
there's multiple anxiety disorders.
So I think it is really important for people to know that anxiety and depression are disorders, and in order for something to be a disorder, it has to actually disrupt your life.
Disrupt your life,
Yeah.
and there's this element of persistency.
Yep.
So if you are
So
anxious,
if it happens like once, it's like a bad day,
it's a bad day, or you have something big coming out,
Yeah.
a big project or big gig, and then you're anxious about it, and when it's over, you're fine. That's okay.
That's normal.
That's
yeah.
a normal reaction
Reaction.
to the situation.
But if it's like you're anxious about getting up in the morning,
Yeah.
or actually, I have a question leading to that. So, if let's say your environment induces nervousness, or even to the point of mild anxiety, would you encourage someone to get out of that environment? So, for example, something that's difficult to get out of, let's say I'm a student and going to school gives me anxiety. How would one combat that? Or what would be a good solution to that situation?
So when someone is anxious, right, one of the most common behavioral reaction is to avoid
Correct.
something that the person is afraid of, right? And what does avoidance do is that it gives relief, instant relief. You feel so much better.
Because you don't have to deal with
you
the
don't
thing.
have to face the scary thing.
Yeah.
But you never really get over that thing. So if it's something that you ultimately still have to face it, right? For example, school.
Like school, yeah.
Right? And let's say you don't want to go to school. And I think it depends on the context. If you are not going because there's people bullying you,
Yes.
right? Then we try to resolve the bullying. Yeah.
That's such a heavy,
That's
such a
another
tricky topic.
another
yeah.
topic altogether. But you are avoiding because you have anxiety disorder. You are just simply scared of taking the test, going to school, or you have social anxiety. You are scared of going to the hall during assembly, seeing people. Then maybe you need to seek professional help for this.
see.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for that. Okay, statement number 2.
Yes.
People with depression are just sad and need to snap out of it.
Yeah. So
As
it's a myth. Yeah.
Myth.
Similar to anxiety, it's oversimplifying a medical condition, and depression is actually a complex disorder. It affects not just your mood, it affects your thinking,
yeah.
it affects your behaviors, it affects your body, your sleep, your appetite, so your energy level. So it's a really complex disorder. And when it affects you so much across different areas of your body, your life, it starts to make you, unable to function properly. Yeah.
And that really, it really happens. I think, Singapore is such a young country too.
Yep.
And the idea of like, babies that like cry because they can't explain what they want. Like, I think anxiety and depression and mental health and these certain terms that we're just not as familiar with can become very daunting when people are avoidant of the term to like actually acknowledge what they're going through, because there's this shame somehow involved. And I don't know, is there any way to just like say that there shouldn't be any shame? It's more of like, if you're sick and you have a flu, you go to the doctor, to get medicine. And when your brain is sick, you also still need to go to the doctor, right?
Yes.
Thank you for that. Okay, last one. Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Talking openly about mental health will make people feel worse.
It's similar to, it's
All
relevant to what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a myth. I think talking about your mental health issues, especially to people whom you can trust and who are willing to listen. Okay, there's some caveat. There are some people whom you might not want to talk to if they might not understand. But if you know the person well, you trust the person, I think it's good and it's nice to share, to get your feelings validated, to get some encouragement, or if your friend or your family member is able to listen to you and give some advice and even give support. Real support. For example, bringing you to see a doctor,
or even just talking it out so you can hear your own thoughts. I think it's so important that because I've been moving around a lot, and it's taken a long time for me to find like a feel rooted in that I have friends that I trust to constantly talk to about certain things, so that I know how on or off the mark I am, or how long I've been sitting in something, so I mean, I think it's like, how would you encourage a youth to reach out to their friends when they're not feeling, or because I feel like when you're young you want to be cool to everyone, right? Especially your friends, but you don't have to always be cool. You can be the cool kid that actually talks about their feelings and works stuff out and encourage other friends. And I don't know if any of the youth that you've worked with, like, they come out of it being brave enough to like hold conversations with their friends about, because I'm sure they don't talk to their friends. That's how they end up further in the hole with this kind of stuff.
I think most of them do talk to their friends about fun things, about the trends.
Of course,
but
sure.
when it comes to difficult topics like emotions, it tend to be a bit harder to share, because there's a stigma of mental illness, right? And there's also this sense of shame about this illness, so or whatever that they are suffering from. So I think it helps for the entire environment to change, by everyone start talking about it. There's actually this macro change to this entire conversations, or even this podcast, right? It helps to open up conversations about mental health issues, and I think it's helpful.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I was very lucky enough to be one of the singers for the Lovin Me song, like the theme song for this campaign and this initiative. And one of the lines that I love is, I'm taking it one step at a time. And I think that's something that's the only way to move forward, right? Like taking it one step at a time. And what is a step that you would say to a youth who is currently not having the easiest time with life right now?
I think it's great. The song is a great song. I listened to it a few times, and I like the lyrics a lot.
Thank you. It was very well written.
Very well written, and especially this part, one step at a time. So for the youth who's struggling right now, I would tell the youth to really don't be afraid to seek help, and look at what's happening in your life that is causing you that distress, and what can you do about it? Is there someone that can support you? If you can't problem solve on your own, there's always a lot of people, whether it's your family members, your teachers, your friends, right? There's someone there who will be able to help you. So don't hesitate to seek help.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
We'll catch you on the next episode of Lovin Me Conversations.